everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, and today we are going to be making some modifications to the Bricklink Designer Program Wild West train. This was one of the finalists from Series 4, and I just got it in the mail a few days ago, and I went ahead and I made a review about it. So if you haven't checked that out yet, I highly recommend it. I will put that video in the top right for you so you can check that out. But with that being said, this train has a number of features about it that I don't necessarily love. So in today's video, the main goal is to modify the engine and tender here. So with that being said, let's bring it over to the build table and let's get started. All right, so I have the entire Wild West train over on the build table here, and I also have the Orient Express right here. And the reason for that, I'll explain that in just a second, but I just wanted to show you guys each piece of rolling stock here with the Wild West train and my plans to modify them. The passenger car and the box car, I'm going to leave as is for the time being. I think they are perfectly fine. I would probably go in, if I did have to make a modification to them, I would probably switch it to the same coupling system that the Orient Express has. I think that's just a stronger connection and it looks a little bit more realistic, but the magnetic couplers don't really bother me that much, so I'm not super worried about it. The flat car though, this will be getting some modifications. I haven't decided if I'm going to take the entire thing apart or if I'm going to expand it out. So that is that there. I need to decide on that. I'm leaning towards modifying it and actually making it a larger piece of rolling stock and making it twice as long. But I have to see if I have brown plate to do that for the base of it here. And then I would also need to see if I have any flex tubing pieces as well. So that is something to keep in mind, but that is a future problem at the moment. My main concern is with the engine and the tender. Now, the engine itself is mostly fine. The only thing that I would really change to this is actually adding the rubber bands to the driving wheels here and here. This one's a blind one. It doesn't have any flanges on it, so it doesn't actually touch the wheels or touch the rails of the track. So I only need 4 rubber bands, and I don't have any more because the 4 that I have are on the Orient Express here. So I would have to go and probably buy third-party ones. I'll have to look online to see what options are out there. So that's that. And then as for the tender, this is where most of the modifications are going to come from. I did a little bit of research online of classic American steam engines and different trains that would be from this era. And I'll put a couple pictures on the screen for you so you can see what they look like there. And as you can see, the tender does not look like how the Wild West train one looks. And so I'm going to go in, I'm going to modify the amount of axles on it. I'm going to modify the coal part of it. I think I'm going to turn that into a wood cache, and I'm going to probably change the design of it as well. I would like to keep the stickered elements on it. I think that looks pretty good, but I guess we'll see how that goes. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right in and I'm going to get started on working on this right now. All right, so I figured I would start with the flat car. I assumed that would be a lot easier than rebuilding the tender from the ground up, and I think I was right. I think this was the right way to start, and so now basically all I've done so far is just add a couple 6x8 plates underneath. So this was the original one, and then I added these 2 right here, and then I took this whole assembly and I moved it over. And then I also added a 6x12 plate on the top in brown. And so this is an old reddish brown plate, so I've been pretty careful with it, but I am scared that it's going to crack on me, so I'm not going to take this entire thing apart. But what you'll notice on this end here is that this end is the same as it was in the original set, and you'll see the buffer kind of sticking out a little too much for my liking. But on this side, what I did was I took the 1x8 plate that was on the end, I replaced it with a 2x8 plate, and then I added a 1x6 brown plate on top. And so I just wanted to show you guys the original versus the modified end. And then so as you can see now, the buffer is a much more lower profile, which I think is good. And then if you take this and you put it on the curved track, it does still roll freely and it does work pretty good. And even with the extended length over the buffer, it does not have a problem coupling to other things. So that is all good. I'm going to get back to work on this, and hopefully this will be done in the next clip because I don't really see much else going on with it. I just need to design some undercarriage detail and then go ahead and add some stuff onto the top, and then we should be all good to go. All right, so here is my completed flat car expansion. And so as you can see, I went ahead and I added a bunch more detail on the top here. I added some treasure chests and then some containers and crates and things. And I'm gonna add lids to these. I just didn't find them yet, so that's fine. I didn't know if I wanted to make them brown or if I wanted to make them a different color, just because I wasn't totally sure if it would be too much brown or if it would actually just look fine. So with that, the undercarriage is actually the part that I spent the most amount of time on. And so as you can see underneath here, it is a pretty decent amount of detail as well. And I tried to beef it up as much as I could. So I have the inverted slopes here and then the bars here in front of the little panel pieces here. And then I just have those on brackets, and then that is pretty much that. And I did have to use my own flex tubing and get a larger piece. This was the piece that came with the set. And then so you can see just how big the new one actually is. So just lining up the one end there. So it's about twice as long. And so I just happen to have two of them at that proper length. So that worked out great. And then I just put cheese slopes on the end to kind of help round that out. I think that looks pretty good. And then that is pretty much that. And I also went and I added back the original pieces of cargo on this flat car. And so with that, that is pretty much everything. And so now we can move on to modifying the tender. All right, so my ideas for the tender here, I don't know how well these are gonna work out. These are just my ideas of things that I wanna change. Is first and foremost is the wheel placement here. I wanna go in and I want to add a fourth axle, so then there'll be one up at the front like there is now. This motorized bogie would be in the middle, which makes 2 and 3. And then I would go ahead and add a fourth one to the back. I don't know how realistic that is. I don't know how the logistics of that would work with each one having to pivot or falling apart like that. But we could try it. We can see how that works. And then we can kind of take it from there. And then I also want to turn the coal area into a wood cache. I think that would look a lot better. And then also I would probably have to expand the length of this a little bit in order to accommodate that fourth axle. But I guess we'll see how that goes. I'm going to probably take this apart and then start over. So with that, I'm going to just jump right in and I will show you guys any progress that I make. All right, so I have been pretty busy redesigning the tender here, and I started with the axles and the placement of each of them. And originally I was going to go with a 22 stud long base, but that ended up being too long. I didn't like how it looked. So I scrapped that and I started over. And now what you are seeing here is a 20 stud long base and then the 4 axles on it like so. And so I have one up at the front, the fixed one. I have the powered up one in the middle and then a sliding one on the rear. And the reason I did it like this was because the Orient Express has a sliding mechanism for its tender so that it can go around the standard Lego curves. And so figured I would apply that here, and this actually seems to work pretty good. Now, there is a couple of problems with this, which I will touch on right now. And the first is that I can't fit a buffer back here. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to add this in because the magnetic couplers only come in one size. So I'm gonna need to figure that out. Not entirely sure how to do that yet, but that is what this video is for, I guess. So I'm gonna try and figure that out. And then hopefully we can come up with something that looks pretty good. And then once we get the base done, I'm gonna work my way up. Figured I would start with the wheel alignment because if I can't get that to work, then there's no point to building out the rest of this. So, but now that this works, I actually have the battery box on it. And so I will show you guys how that looks. So I'll just place this on the track here. And then as you can see, it does look a little wonky, but if you just press the buttons here, it does actually roll, which is really, really cool. So, and all 4 wheels are connected to the track at the same time. So it does look a little funky, but it works. And that is the biggest thing. I did also take this around the layout already. I had it do a couple laps and it didn't derail once. So that's a win in my book. I'm going to take it and I'm going to run with it. And so now we can go ahead, we can try to figure out the placement of the couplers and all of that. And then we can go ahead and work our way up. All right, so some time has passed since that last clip, and you're probably wondering why you're looking at the locomotive right now instead of the tender. Well, that's because I had to mess around with the tender a lot more just to get the couplers in, and I realized that since I didn't have the space for the magnetic one, I would have to use the ball joint pieces that the Orient Express used. And instead of changing the entire train, I figured I would just change the connection between the tender and the locomotive because that seemed like the easiest thing to do. And then I had to go into the locomotive and mess around with different heights for these ball joint pieces. And then I settled on this. So I had to rebuild the entire locomotive. Essentially, I had to move this one plate, this gray plate here. It is a 4x10, I believe it is, or a 4x12. And I had to take out the 1x4 plate that was next to it up here and shift everything down. And then that left me enough room to slot this in. And then I just have this one piece right here. And then that allows this to be at the same height here. So it's been a lot. It's been a lot of trial and error, and I've even tested it around the layout, and it works. Unfortunately, though, the holes here are necessary. I tried putting stacks of 1x1 plates in there, and then this front axle didn't have enough room to pivot. And so as you can see, the white right there, that is the rail plate that is actually sliding in the track to move the axle, and it needed that little extra bit to make it around the curve. So I have to probably put a little corner panel in here maybe, or I don't know, something to fill that gap there. I'll figure that out later though. But for right now, I am just gonna sit here with this. This is now the proper size and dimensions, and it also runs around the track and it can connect to the locomotive. So that is great to see. And so now with that, I can finally go ahead and start to build up the tender. I still have very vague ideas for the design that I want to use for this, but I'm going to go ahead and try my luck anyways. And then hopefully in the next clip, it will start to take shape a little bit, and then we can start to see where it goes. All right, so I've been pretty busy here, and I have been redesigning this from the ground up, and I tried black cheese slopes on the top here, as you can see. So I have dark red on this first side here, and then flipping it around, you can see that I first tried the black cheese slopes up at the top. I didn't really like how that looked, and I also wasn't sure about the 1x3 black tiles sticking out a little bit extra than the stickered tiles. So I ended up changing it to the side that you're seeing right now, which is the dark red cheese slopes up at the top, and then the dark red 1x2s and the black 1x1 tiles at the same depth as all of the other tiles that were originally on the tender. So that is what that looks like, and now this is what it looks like now with all of the dark red cheese slopes on the top here. Unfortunately, I don't have enough of the 1x2 cheese slopes, so I had to mix in 1x1s as well, but I don't think that looks too bad. So that is all good here. And then the powered up hub is in there as well. And so now this entire thing is almost done. We are almost near the home stretch here. Just need to figure out this front section here, and then we can add tan and dark tan and other things up here to make it look like wood. So I still think I want to do the wood as opposed to coal. So that is pretty much that there. So this is looking really good, and I'm very happy with this. It's turning out way better than I was expecting. And if you guys agree, make sure to like the video as well as subscribe, and also make sure to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss when future videos drop, like running this train around the Lego City layout. But with that being said, I'm going to get back to work here because this tender is not done yet, and the locomotive is also not done yet. There are still a couple of changes that I want to make to that model, so I'm going to get back to work, and hopefully the next time you see this tender here, it will be done. All right, so this tender is now complete, and so as you can see, I have a bunch of tan plate and ingot tiles on the top here to look like wood, and then kind of spinning this around here for you, you can see that the wood is pretty much just spilling out in the front here, and I think this looks pretty good. I could have also added some dark tan, but I think the tan works. I think that looks fine, and I added this guy with an axe here, and then I just need to go and grab one more of these 3 long bars in dark gray, because here on the original set was a shovel, and obviously you're not going to use a shovel with wood, so that is pretty much that. So I think this looks really good. I'm very happy with this. I do also need to grab that 1/4 round tile right up at the front here. But other than that, this is pretty much done. So I'm going to go ahead and find those 2 pieces, and then we can go ahead and put this on the layout and see how the entire train runs now. And then also these medium blue corner bricks here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't have any in black, so I just put medium blue for the time being. That is something that I need to order. And then the only real other things that I need to do are add the rubber bands to the locomotive here on the driving wheels, but I have those on order from Amazon. I'm trying third-party ones, so in the next clip, I will show you guys what that looks like. And then we can go ahead and test this running around the layout. I've talked about my modifications to this already, but I don't know if I touched on the fact that I removed the lamp from back here. It didn't have enough friction in it, and it kept rotating, and it didn't look right, so figured I would just get rid of it, and if I ever want to add it back, I would just add it back on one of these bars here. I would just connect it to that. So other than that, I think I've talked about everything else that I did to the locomotive. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead, find that 1/4 round tile as well as the bar, and then we can go and run this around the layout, and I will show you guys what that looks like. All right, so the engine as well as the rest of the train is on the track, but I'm focusing on the locomotive for just 1 second here because I did go ahead and get rubber bands in and I added them on. They are not official Lego pieces. I bought 750 of these random colored ones that are the same size as the official Lego ones for $7. So thought that was a pretty decent deal. They are in a bunch of random colors, as you can see. I would have preferred black, but I don't think the red looks bad because the train has red in it, so I feel like that makes a little bit of sense. And so I will leave the link to those rubber bands that I purchased down in the description below. That is an affiliate link, but that will not cost you anything extra. So if you guys would check that out, I would really appreciate it. But the only other change that I made to this was that I added the brown 1x1 plates on the sides here as opposed to the gold round studs. I could have added gold regular plates instead of the round ones, but I don't know. I think the brown gives it a little bit of a cleaner look, and so that is pretty much that there. And so with that, this actually seems to roll pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to couple this up to the rest of the train here. Let's see if I can do this all in one take, and then we can go ahead and turn it on and get this started because I do still have the battery box in here. It is just covered up, and it is only covered up by a couple of studs here, so it should be, in theory, pretty easy to remove. So all you have to do is just pull this section up here, and then you can get access to the battery box here, and then you can just press the button to turn it on. All right, so the controller is now paired with the battery box here. I don't know why, but one in every like 10 times, it just, every time I press the buttons, it doesn't pair, and then they just kind of cycle through the pairing process and then turn off, and then I just have to try it again. I don't know why it does that, but let me know in the comments if you guys have also had that issue. But now battery box itself is on, and then I'm gonna get this on the straight here just to kind of get it started here so it's not starting on a curve. I feel like that wouldn't be good for it. So we are going to get it started right now, and I'm gonna bring it up a few notches here, and it looks like it's actually not doing that bad. This train is considerably heavier than the official set that was sent out by the Bricklink Designer Program, and so with that, it has a lot more weight to it, but I think it still runs pretty good. And as you see, the rubber bands are doing their job as well, and the tender looks good. All 4 of the wheels are still intact, surprisingly, which is always good to see. Thank you guys so much for watching this. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully you found this informative or at the very least entertaining. If you did, make sure to like the video and subscribe, as well as click the bell notification so you don't miss any future uploads, like more custom trains or more modifications to official Lego sets. If you guys have any feedback for me on things that I should add to this train, make sure to drop a comment down below to let me know what you think. But once again, seriously, thank you guys so much for watching, but I cannot wait to see you next time. Bye for now.